I planned David and Lynn's airline return. They had been in Cape Cod and they were coming up for the Emmys, which were going to be that Sunday. And he said, I checked at what flight I put them on, and I put them on.
Great comedy often hides its smartest moments in plain sight.
Oh my God! Fancy seeing you here!
Frasier did this better than most, slipping clever inside jokes into scenes many viewers never fully caught.
Problem was, people at the next table barely touched this pork chop.
Over time, fans began to notice just how intentional these moments were, turning simple lines into something much deeper. But how many of these brilliant jokes did you actually spot? Join us as we uncover 15 of Frasier's most brilliant inside jokes you have to see. Kelsey's record-breaking call-out. In the season 11 episode Caught in the Act, Frasier reconnects with his first wife, Nanette, now a successful children's entertainer known as Nanny G, played by Laurie Metcalf. During a backstage conversation, Nanette complains about feeling trapped in her career. She asks Frasier, "Do you have any idea what it's like to play the same character for 20 years?" By that episode's 2004 airing, Kelsey Grammer had been playing Frasier Crane for exactly 20 years, starting with his first appearance on Cheers in 1984 and continuing through Frasier's 2004 finale. The joke worked on many levels. Metcalf was actually the third actress to portray Nanette. Emma Thompson originated the role on Cheers in 1992, so the character complaining about playing the same role for 2 decades was being played by someone who'd only recently taken over the part. Grammer's 20-year run as Frasier Crane tied the record set by James Arness, who played Marshal Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke from 1955 to 1975. What made Grammer's achievement particularly notable was that he played Frasier Crane across 3 different series, appearing on Cheers from 1984 to 1993, making guest appearances on Wings, and starring in Frasier from 1993 to 2004. He became the first American actor nominated for multiple Emmy Awards for portraying the same character on 3 different television shows. The studio audience reportedly laughed so hard during filming of the Nanny G performance scenes that the volume had to be turned down to avoid drowning out the dialogue. That wasn't the only time the show acknowledged its own history. The name that said goodbye. The series finale, Good Night, Seattle, aired on May 13, 2004, wrapping up 11 seasons of Frasier. In the final episode, Daphne gives birth to her and Niles' first child at a veterinary clinic after Eddie the dog accidentally eats their wedding rings and needs emergency treatment. The couple names their son David, a choice that seemed sweet but unremarkable to casual viewers. The name honored David Angel, one of Frasier's 3 co-creators, who had died in the September 11th attacks. David Angel, along with Peter Casey and David Lee, formed the creative team that developed Frasier after working together as producers on Cheers. The trio also created Wings, 1990 to 1997. Together they won 24 Emmy Awards out of 37 nominations for their work across multiple series. On September 11, 2001, Angel and his wife Lynn were returning home from a vacation on Cape Cod when they boarded American Airlines Flight 11, which became the first plane to hit the World Trade Center. The tragedy occurred while Frasier was between its 9th and 10th seasons. The show's creators faced the question of how to acknowledge their lost colleague. They chose to wait until the series finale to pay tribute, naming Niles and Daphne's baby David in Angel's memory. At the National September 11th Memorial, Angel and his wife are memorialized at the North Pool on Panel N1 along with other passengers from Flight 11. The tribute was exactly the kind of understated acknowledgement that fit the show's sensibility. The fourth wall wink. In a 1994 first-season episode, Niles visits Frasier's apartment and discovers that their father Martin has moved in with Frasier following Martin's injury. The revelation leads to a conversation about family, acceptance, and what they should tell their father about various matters. At one point, Niles asks about telling Martin something, then glances directly at the camera while saying, "Do you want to tell Dad or shall I?" The moment breaks the fourth wall in a way Frasier rarely did, and it carried extra meaning for viewers who knew about David Hyde Pierce's personal life. David Hyde Pierce, who played Niles, was gay in real life, though he hadn't publicly come out when the episode aired in 1994. The camera look and the line's delivery created an inside joke that acknowledged Pierce's sexuality, without explicitly stating it. Pierce wouldn't publicly acknowledge being gay until years later, in 2007. By that point, his sexuality had been an open secret in the industry for years. The moment was bold for 1994, when gay visibility on TV was far less common. Frasier itself would feature several gay characters throughout its run, treating them with the same respect and complexity as any other characters. But this early fourth wall break stood out as a moment where the show acknowledged the difference between the character and the actor playing him. Niles Crane spent 11 seasons chasing and eventually marrying Daphne Moon, one of television's most extended romantic pursuits. The fact that Pierce was gay added a deeper meaning to his committed portrayal of a man desperately in love with a woman. Directors rarely broke the fourth wall on Frasier, making this moment stand out even more. These knowing glances weren't the only way the show honored people behind the camera. A name that means everything. Roz Doyle, Frasier's sharp-tongued radio producer played by Peri Gilpin, became one of the show's most beloved characters. Her name seemed like a random choice, two simple syllables that fit the character's no-nonsense personality. But the name carried deep meaning for the show's creators. Roz Doyle was named after Roz Doyle, a producer on Wings who had died of breast cancer in 1991. Wings was the sitcom that David Angel, Peter Casey, and David Lee created before Frasier. The show ran on NBC from 1990 to 1997, overlapping with Frasier's first 4 seasons. Roz Doyle worked as a producer on Wings, becoming beloved by the cast and crew. When she died of breast cancer at a young age, it devastated the Wings family. The creators honored her by naming a character after her. The choice to make the character a radio producer created an additional connection, linking the real-life television producer to the fictional radio producer. Peri Gilpin brought Roz Doyle to life as a confident, sexually liberated woman who refused to apologize for her choices. The character became a feminist icon on 1990s television, showing a woman who enjoyed casual relationships without shame and who built a successful career in a male-dominated field. She eventually became a single mother, raising her daughter Alice while continuing to work and maintain her independence. Gilpin never met the real Roz Doyle, but she understood the responsibility of carrying someone's name. She played the character with strength and vulnerability, making Roz Doyle one of the most three-dimensional supporting characters in sitcom history. The tribute worked on 2 levels. It honored a fallen colleague, and it created a character who embodied the same professionalism and competence that the real Roz Doyle had displayed. For fans who knew the backstory, every appearance of Roz Doyle on screen carried extra weight. The 9-pound, 12-ounce weight loss.
The waitress's eyebrows nearly hit the ceiling when I asked for a doggy bag.
I don't know what her problem was. People at the next table barely touched this pork chop.
Season 8 of Frasier featured a storyline where Daphne, played by Jane Leeves, gained a lot of weight. The show explained it by having Daphne comfort eat during the stress of her growing relationship with Niles, after years of him pining for her from afar. The weight gain became a major plot point, with Daphne eventually going to what the show called a fat spa to lose the pounds. The storyline felt oddly specific when Niles announced Daphne had lost exactly 9 pounds and 12 ounces. That precise number wasn't random. It was the exact birth weight of Jane Leaves's real baby. Leaves became pregnant during season 8, and the show's writers had to decide how to handle it. They couldn't make Daphne pregnant since she and Niles had just started dating, so they used weight gain instead. Instead, the writers chose to have Daphne gain weight for other reasons, allowing Leaves to continue working while actually showing her pregnancy weight on screen. The fat spa storyline allowed Leaves to disappear from several episodes during the end of her pregnancy and immediately after giving birth. When Daphne returned to the show, she'd miraculously lost all the weight at the spa. The 9-pound 12-ounce announcement was a coded birth announcement to viewers, letting them in on the real reason for Daphne's temporary absence. Leaves gave birth to her daughter, Isabella Catherine Coben, in January 2001. The approach showed how sitcoms in the early 2000s dealt with actress pregnancies before the trend of writing pregnancies into shows became more standard practice. Modern shows regularly incorporate actress pregnancies into storylines, but Frasier chose to hide Leaves' pregnancy behind a weight gain plot that became one of the show's more controversial arcs, the real-life Mrs. Crane. In the 1997 Halloween episode, Frasier becomes obsessed with an attractive woman at Niall's costume party. He pursues her throughout the evening, trying to win her attention while competing with other men. The woman, named Eve, is played by Kelsey Grammer, who happened to be Kelsey Grammer's real-life wife at the time. Casting Kelsey's actual spouse as the unattainable woman his character desperately pursues created an irony that amused everyone on set. Kelsey Grammer married Camille Donatacci in 1997, the same year the Halloween episode aired. The episode was one of her early acting roles. Watching Frasier Crane chase after a woman played by Kelsey Grammer's wife added a meta-element to the performance, with Kelsey essentially pursuing his own spouse while playing a character who couldn't get her attention. The marriage between Kelsey and Camille lasted until 2010, when they filed for divorce after 13 years together. Their split became public and messy, playing out in tabloids and on Camille's appearances in The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. But back in 1997, their relationship was new, and the casting choice seemed like a fun bit of stunt casting rather than anything big. The episode worked because Camille played her role with the right amount of mystery and aloofness, making it believable that Frasier would become fixated on her. For viewers who recognized her or read about the casting in TV Guide, the inside joke added an extra dimension to the episode. The show would occasionally cast family members and spouses of the main actors, turning the Frasier set into something of a family affair. And speaking of families, sometimes the show brought in actual family members for brief appearances. A family affair at McGinty's. The Season 3 episode Police Story featured a scene set in McGinty's bar, where Niles and Frasier interact with several bar patrons. But 3 of those extras were actually the real parents of Jane Leaves, Perry Gilpin, and David Hyde Pierce. The show flew the parents in from various locations and gave them small roles as background actors, creating a family reunion disguised as a normal filming day. Casting family as extras was common practice, but having all 3 sets of parents appear in the same scene turned it into something special. The production kept it quiet, with no announcement or special acknowledgement in the episode itself. Viewers who didn't know wouldn't notice anything unusual about the scene, but for the actors involved, having their parents on set watching them work and actually appearing in the scene created a memorable experience that they would carry with them long after the episode wrapped. Jane Leaves's parents flew in from England specifically for the appearance. David Hyde Pierce's parents came from wherever they were living at the time. Perry Gilpin's parents made the trip to be part of the scene. The bar setting made perfect sense for background actors, giving them a reason to be present in the frame without requiring dialogue or significant screen time that might have been beyond their comfort level as non-professionals. Directors could film the main actor's scene while naturally incorporating the parents into shots, making them part of the visual fabric of the episode. The gesture showed how Frasier's production created a family atmosphere that extended beyond just the regular cast members. Daphne's husband. Jane Leaves married Marshall Coben in 1996 during Frasier's 3rd season. Coben worked as a television executive. In 2003, producers decided to give Coben a small cameo role, casting him in an episode. But instead of playing someone connected to Daphne, the character Jane Leaves played, they cast him as Jason, a man who gets paired up with Roz in a scene. Watching Leaves's real husband romance Perry Gilpin's character, while Leaves stood nearby in the same scene, created an amusing dynamic on set that the cast and crew appreciated. The casting choice showed a playful approach to incorporating spouses into the show. Instead of taking the obvious route and having Coben interact with his actual wife's character, which would have been the expected choice, they deliberately avoided it. Jason appeared in a scene at Café Nervosa, the coffee shop that Frasier and Niles frequented throughout the series, chatting with Roz while the other characters observed the interaction. Leaves and Coben maintained complete professionalism on set, treating the scene like any other work assignment rather than making a big deal out of filming together. Coben's appearance came during season 11, near the very end of Frasier's run. By that point, the show had established something of a tradition of giving small roles to cast members' spouses and family members. A Dance with the Husband. The season 7 episode Rivals ended with a tag scene showing Roz dancing with a waiter during the closing credits. The waiter was Christian Vincent, Gilpin's real husband. Vincent wasn't a professional actor making a guest appearance or an aspiring performer getting his big break. He was Perry Gilpin's real-life husband, given a brief role in a throwaway scene that most viewers wouldn't think twice about. Christian Vincent married Perry Gilpin in 1999, after she'd already been playing Roz for 6 seasons on the show. Unlike some of the other spouse cameos on Frasier, Vincent's appearance was barely noticeable to anyone not paying close attention. The end credit scenes on Frasier often featured short gags or callbacks that played while the credits scrolled up the screen. These weren't essential to the episode's main plot, just final buttons to send viewers off with a smile as they reached for their remotes. Casting Vincent as Roz's dance partner fit perfectly into that format. The dance itself lasted only a few seconds, just long enough to register what was happening before the credits ended completely. Gilpin and Vincent had actual chemistry as a married couple, and their comfort with each other showed in the brief interaction, making the moment feel natural rather than forced or awkward. End credit tags gave Frasier's producers a perfect opportunity to include these kinds of Easter eggs without risking the integrity of the main episode. That same playful spirit showed up in background actors who appeared over and over. The silent mascot of Frasier. Joan Kerrigan never had a speaking role on Frasier. She never played a named character with a storyline or significant screen time that would make her memorable to casual viewers. But she appeared in over 34 episodes across Cheers and Frasier as an unnamed presence, always there in the background, part of the show's visual continuity. Kerrigan worked as a stand-in for the series, the person who took an actor's place during lighting and camera setups, so the actual actors didn't have to stand around for hours while the crew made technical adjustments. Stand-ins are crucial to television production, but usually remain completely invisible to viewers. They match the height and coloring of the actor they're standing in for, allowing lighting designers to set levels properly and camera operators to frame shots correctly before filming begins. When the actual filming starts, the stand-ins step out of frame and the real actors step into their precisely marked positions. Occasionally, productions will use their stand-ins as background extras, giving them on-screen appearances as a form of thanks for their behind-the-scenes work. Kerrigan's repeated appearances throughout both Cheers and Frasier created a cult following among the most dedicated fans who started spotting her in scenes and documenting when and where she appeared. Online fan communities tracked her appearances, turning her into something of a mascot for the show's long-running continuity. The fact that she appeared on both Cheers and Frasier linked the two series through this unnamed background presence, creating a visual Easter egg for fans obsessive enough to notice the same face appearing again and again across hundreds of episodes spanning nearly 2 decades. The Headley in-joke. The Season 7 episode Ham Radio featured a memorable guest appearance by Sir Derek Jacobi playing Jackson Headley, a terrible actor who completely ruins Frasier's elaborate radio play production. The casting of Jacobi, one of Britain's most respected Shakespearean actors, to play an incompetent performer created immediate irony that theater-savvy viewers appreciated. but the role contained an additional layer of inside joke comedy specifically aimed at Jacoby's contemporary and fellow classical actor, Patrick Stewart. Both Derek Jacoby and Patrick Stewart were legendary stage actors who'd built illustrious careers, performing Shakespeare and other classical works in Britain's most prestigious theaters. Both had also crossed over into science fiction television and film later in their careers, finding massive mainstream success in genre work that theater purists might have considered beneath serious actors. Stewart found success playing Captain Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek: The Next Generation from 1987 to 1994, and later played Professor Charles Xavier in the X-Men film series starting in 2000. The Frasier episode had Jacoby playing a ham actor specifically to create a playful jab at the entire notion of Shakespearean actors lowering themselves to participate in popular genre entertainment. The joke worked on multiple levels because Jacoby himself had appeared in science fiction and genre projects, including his acclaimed performance in the 1976 miniseries I, Claudius, and later various other genre works. By having him play an over-the-top terrible actor, the show essentially let Jacoby mock his own profession and possibly take gentle shots at his colleagues like Stewart, who'd found fame in Star Trek and superhero movies. The Simpsons crossover gag. In a mid-series episode of Frasier, Niles makes an offhand reference to big, fluffy red shoes while describing something in conversation with his brother. The line seemed like a completely random description until viewers familiar with The Simpsons recognized it as a direct reference to Sideshow Bob, the recurring villain character that Kelsey Grammer voiced on that long-running animated series. Sideshow Bob, the cultured criminal obsessed with killing Bart Simpson, wore ridiculously oversized shoes as part of his visual character design, making the shoes one of his most distinctive features. Kelsey Grammer first voiced Sideshow Bob on The Simpsons in 1990, a full 4 years before Frasier premiered on NBC. The character became a recurring villain on The Simpsons, appearing in multiple episodes across the decades and becoming one of the show's most beloved antagonists. Grammer brought the same theatrical sophistication and precise comic timing to Sideshow Bob that he brought to Frasier Crane, essentially making Bob a cultured psychopath who quoted Shakespeare while attempting murder. The character won Grammer an Emmy for Outstanding Voiceover Performance in 2006, adding to his collection of awards for playing Frasier. The connection between The Simpsons and Frasier went even deeper than just Kelsey Grammer's dual role. David Hyde Pierce eventually voiced Cecil Terwilliger, Sideshow Bob's brother, in a 1997 Simpsons episode titled Brother from Another Series. The episode deliberately played on the Frasier-brother relationship, with Cecil and Bob's relationship directly mirroring the sophisticated bickering between Frasier and Niles. The Simpsons writers cast Pierce specifically to create that connection, essentially making the episode a crossover of sorts between the two shows. These inter-show references weren't the only times Frasier drew from real experiences. The Vacation from Hell. The episode Voyage of the Damned follows Frasier on what should have been a relaxing cruise that quickly turns into a complete nightmare. Instead of a peaceful getaway, he finds himself stuck in a series of awkward situations and constant social interactions that make it impossible to unwind. The uncomfortable scenario, where Frasier can't escape the chaos around him even in paradise, plays directly into one of the show's most consistent themes. The situation creates tension throughout what should have been a stress-free holiday, making genuine relaxation impossible because Frasier constantly feels overwhelmed and out of control. His attempts to maintain composure only make things worse, as each new interaction adds another layer of frustration. The other passengers, the crowded environment, and the lack of privacy all contribute to the growing sense of discomfort. The cruise setting makes the situation even more claustrophobic because there's truly no escape on a ship at sea. The episode leans into Frasier's neuroses about control and his inability to relax when things don't go his way. Martin, meanwhile, has no such concerns, and fully enjoys himself despite Frasier's escalating stress levels throughout the voyage. The British accents. Daphne Moon spoke with a Manchester accent throughout Frasier's entire 11-season run. Jane Leeves was from Essex, making the accent fake. The accent was carefully crafted with extensive dialect coaching and crucial assistance from John Mahoney, who played Martin Crane. Mahoney was born in Manchester and grew up there before eventually moving to the United States, making him a native speaker of the precise accent that Leeves was attempting to replicate convincingly for American audiences. The irony of the situation deepened considerably in episodes like Look Before You Leap, where Martin makes comments about Daphne's accent or references her British background and mannerisms. John Mahoney, the actual native Manchester speaker, found himself in a position where his character could theoretically correct or mock Jane Leeves's carefully constructed fake accent, despite the fact that Mahoney had actually been instrumental in helping her develop that accent in the first place. Leeves had worked closely with Mahoney from the show's very first season to refine and perfect her Manchester accent, with Mahoney providing detailed feedback and suggestions based on his authentic experience growing up in that region. Leeves's natural Essex background gave her a completely different accent than the one Daphne spoke with throughout the series. Essex accents are strongly associated with working-class London suburbs and sound absolutely nothing like Manchester accents to British ears, though American audiences generally couldn't distinguish between the regional variations. The Full Circle Mover and Martin's Recliner. The series began its pilot episode with a mover named Cleto Augusto, bringing Martin's ratty, duct-taped recliner into Frasier's well-decorated apartment, much to Frasier's absolute horror and dismay. The worn chair clashed with Frasier's aesthetic, but Martin refused to part with it. The chair became a powerful symbol of the fundamental clash between Frasier's upper-class pretensions and Martin's unpretentious working-class values, appearing in every episode. In the finale, the same mover returned wearing the same shirt to remove the chair, perfectly closing the visual loop that the show had opened in its very first minutes. Cleto Augusto worked as a set decorator. The show's producers gave him a brief on-screen role in the pilot episode, allowing him to be the specific person who carried in the chair that would come to define so much of Martin Crane's character and his relationship with his son. Having him return 11 years later in the same costume created perfect symmetry, demonstrating Frasier's attention to detail. Cleto Augusto passed away in 2015, more than a decade after Frasier ended its broadcast run. His brief appearances at both the beginning and end of the series became his most publicly visible work, forever tying him to one of the most critically acclaimed and commercially successful sitcoms in television history. What do you think? Did you catch most of these inside jokes on your first watch, or did some of them completely fly under your radar? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.